Hi, I'm Lori Rosakis. Welcome to Video Aided Instruction's Upgrade Your Writing series. This is the 9th program in the series, Improving Your Vocabulary. Let's start with an introduction. One great way to upgrade your writing is to upgrade your vocabulary. That's because the words that you choose help you communicate your meaning, and they help you write with style. You want to write clearly and you want to write directly. You want to use the words that suit your purpose and your audience. Those are not necessarily the longest words. Remember that words are the building blocks of thought. You want to learn as many words as you can so you have a wide variety of words to choose from. This will help you convey your meaning with clarity and with style. But there are some words that you want to avoid. First of all, you want to avoid slang and idiomatic expressions. These are informal phrases that don't really belong in academic writing. The problem with slang and the problem with idiomatic expressions is they're often not understood except in a very small group of people. So if somebody outside that group is reading your writing, they're not going to know what you mean. Second, slang and idiomatic expressions go out of fashion very quickly. So a phrase that sounds very fresh and new now is going to sound very stale and old in as short as 3 or 4 months. And you want your writing to have a little bit of lasting power. And finally, you run the risk of somebody not understanding what on earth you're saying. You might be misspelling it, might not have a standardized spelling, so you want to avoid these. Next, you want to avoid charged and biased language. These are words or phrases that might reinforce any negative prejudices or stereotypes. You can identify these words because when you write them or when you hear them or when you think about them, you're going to pause a second and wonder how they may be taken by your audience. If you're pausing, don't use the word, because then you know that your audience is apt to be offended or maybe just a bit put off. So you don't want to use any of those words as well. And last, you don't want to use jargon. Jargon is a vocabulary that's pertinent to a particular profession, field, or group. For example, there's medical jargon, there's law jargon, and so on. Medical jargon we call anatomy, things like that. Law jargon we sometimes call legalese. And those are words or phrases that other doctors or other lawyers might understand, but if your audience is not made up of those people, they're not going to understand what you're writing about. In academic writing, in the writing that you do in school and on standardized tests, you should use jargon only when you're absolutely sure that your readers will understand it without any explanation or any definition. To recap, avoid slang and idiomatic expressions because they're stale and not widely understood. Avoid charged or biased language because that will offend your readers. And avoid jargon, specialized terms, because the likelihood is that your audience will not understand what you're writing about. One final note about jargon. As you continue your education, when you go to college, if you go to grad school, you are, of course, going to learn the jargon of your specific field. So if you decide to become a lawyer or a doctor or a scientist, you're going to learn those specific words. Of course, at that point, you will use those words in your essays because your audience will expect you to use those words. But always define them to make sure, 100% sure, that your audience understands what you're writing about. But other than that, you have hundreds of thousands of words that you can choose from. Now, let's talk about some other ways that you can upgrade your vocabulary. First of all, you want to have fun learning words. You don't want to make it into drudgery. In addition, you want to learn denotations and connotations of words, and we'll talk about that in a moment. You want to learn roots, prefixes, and suffixes, those are word parts. And you want to learn words that have entered English from other languages. Let's start with having a little bit of fun. One of the most fun ways to learn words is to play word games. Another way is to read widely. In addition, you can learn word histories. Be very careful to pronounce your words correctly. You want to make and use word cards. You want to learn synonyms and antonyms. And you want to use dictionaries and thesauruses. Playing word games is very effective and a lot of fun. A great way to learn a lot of vocabulary. You can play traditional word games such as Scrabble or Boggle, or you can make up your own word games by yourself or with friends. There are many word games that you can find in daily newspapers, especially crossword puzzles, word finds, word scrambles, and jumbles. You can find them in daily newspapers, and you can find them in Saturday and Sunday editions of newspapers. There are many online as well. You can just Google or look up any kind of puzzle and find those, download them, and solve them. It's a very fun and very effective way to increase your vocabulary. Now, reading is one of the most effective ways to increase your vocabulary and also one of the most fun ways. You can read anything that you like. You can read fiction, novels and short stories. You can read nonfiction, essays, autobiographies, biographies. You can read magazines, newspapers. Try to get in the habit of reading a newspaper every day. You can read it in print or you can read it online, whatever's easier for you. You can read web pages. You can read a friend's blog. You can read poems. You can read plays. You can read technical material. In short, you can read anything that gives you pleasure as long as you read consistently. If you really want to improve your vocabulary, try to read about a half an hour a day, and then you'll see some real progress. But remember, have a dictionary on hand when you read so you can look up any unfamiliar words. You may also want to keep a little journal or log of new words that you learn. Write them down and then write down the definition. The act of writing them down helps you remember them. And that way you're also increasing your vocabulary in addition to using the reading. Now, when you read, sometimes you find words that you don't know. You can take out your dictionary and you can look them up. But you may not have your dictionary with you. You may be taking a standardized test. You may be reading a newspaper on the bus. So sometimes you can use context clues to figure out what an unfamiliar word means. The context is the surrounding words, the surrounding phrases. Authors very often put context clues in to make it easier for their readers to figure out the words. There are 6 different types of context clues that you can use. These tend to give away the meaning of the word. They are definition, restatement, contrast, cause and effect, example, style, and tone. Let's take a look at each one of these in detail. A definition clue actually has the definition right in the context. So you will actually find the answer in the sentence. Here's an example. She used a graduated cylinder, a tube-like container that allows one to measure the volume of a liquid. The unfamiliar word there is a graduated cylinder. You may know what graduated means, you may know what cylinder means, but you don't know what that means together. So the author has given you a context clue, which is an actual definition. A graduated cylinder is a tube-like container that allows one to measure the volume of a liquid. That definition clue can come before or after the unfamiliar word. So look in both places and see if the author has given you a definition clue. Sometimes the author will take that definition clue and put it in parentheses right after the word as well to make sure that you understand it. The second type of context clue is a restatement. With this type of context clue, the author includes a synonym. That's a word that means the same or almost the same as the unfamiliar word. It's similar to a definition clue, but it's a little bit less direct. So you've got to find that synonym and match it to the unfamiliar word. Here's an example. The two theories were mutually exclusive. They were conflicting and could not both be true. The unfamiliar phrase there is mutually exclusive. And the restatement synonym clue is conflicting and could not both be true. So you know that mutually exclusive is something that is conflicting and cannot both be true. So you found those synonyms and you matched them to the unfamiliar word or phrase. The third type of context clue is contrast. And in this case, the author includes an antonym, a word that is the opposite or nearly the opposite of the word that you don't know. Here's an example. Had Frank been a master painter, the finished portrait would have been beautiful. Unfortunately, it revealed that he was merely a dilettante. So now I don't know what that word dilettante means. I see unfortunately, which tells me I've got a contrast, I have the opposite. And the contrast clue I find is master painter. So whatever dilettante means, it has to be the opposite of a master painter. From that I can infer that a dilettante is somebody who dabbles in things, who doesn't master something fully. So Frank must be somebody who is a casual weekend painter, not someone who is an accomplished master painter. And my tip-off to the contrast clue was the word unfortunately, which told me that I had the opposite of dilettante. In addition, authors can use cause and effect. When the meaning of an unfamiliar word or phrase can be inferred because the context includes a cause and effect relationship between the two events. Remember that a cause is why something happens, and the effect is the result, or what happens. Here's an example. The home team had vanquished their opponents earlier that day and celebrated long into the evening. Well, I don't know what vanquished means. I've not seen that word, but I know they celebrated. Well, if they celebrated, something caused them to be happy. Well, what would cause a home team to be happy must be a victory. So vanquished must be something having to do with the team achieving a victory. From that I can infer what happened is they won, and they won significantly over their opponents. So vanquish must mean to get rid of or to eliminate. Context clues can also be an example. If you don't know the unfamiliar word, you look for an example that illustrates its meaning, or an example of some other word or phrase that you know. For example, in that version of the software, you could tweak the basic features of the face. You could fine-tune the eyes, the ears, the nose, the mouth, and make other minor adjustments. Well, you may not know what tweak means, or you may have sort of a general idea, but you might not be exactly sure. So you look for some context clues, and you find fine-tune, make minor adjustments. So you know that fine-tuning and making minor adjustments are examples of tweaking. Well, putting these clues together, therefore, tweaking must mean to do some kind of small change. And indeed, it does mean that. Put it back in the sentence to check your understanding. In that version of the software, you could make minor changes to the basic features of the face. You could fine-tune the eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and make other minor adjustments. Makes perfect sense. You know that you're right. In addition, the style and the tone of a passage can help